Hello and welcome to Hanger V Hobby Hangout, the unprofessional, opinionated podcast about plastic, plastic crack, and plastic modeling and everything adjacent. I am one of your hosts, Springer,
And I'm his co-host Tux, aka Loretype. Hello.
and today we have with us Jag.
Ah, we got the intro right this time?
Yes,
Excellent.
and Jishan.
Hello.
So today we're kind of doing a follow up discussion of something that we've talked about before, but I feel like it's something that needs more than one discussion and especially more than one set of people. And obviously, this is not a definitive discussion on what is identified as FOMO, the fear of missing out. Something very prevalent in a hobby, especially one where collecting is a big part of it. And, big part of it is also like the drop nature, the frequent release cycle. um, I've said some words about this before. I'll probably repeat myself again, but I definitely wanted to get some additional opinions, uh, just on what everyone, I mean, I feel like it's something that, it's very prevalent. I've seen it in not just, Gunpla, but other plastic modeling and miniatures and hobbies.
I'm going to leap in on the back of what you just said there, to be honest, because I think it's really interesting to compare this to like the two other kind of collecty hobbies that I personally got. Um, so I used to be really into Games Workshop miniature gaming in particular. I sort of picked up Marvel Crisis Protocol more recently, and there's definitely like a sort of a desire to keep up with the release cycle. But to be honest, like the FOMO for a lot of miniature stuff never really used to be there because they weren't. A lot of it sort of wasn't limited edition. A lot of it was just the new hotness. And it's only more recently that GW in particular have started making things more limited releases. And I actually, one of the things that made me drop that was the incredible difficulty due to their really crappy web store of like getting a new release, even if you were there on release day the second it went live.
Mhm.
Um, and like I mentioned last recording, I also collect Transformers figures, and again, like it's rarer nowadays, but every now and again, like there'll be a release for that where you blink and you miss it. And Jag will back me up on this. Like some stuff like any of the high end Macross, like non plamo, like the
Good.
like the not
The
not
the
Hasegawa.
the Arc the Arcadia
Okay, yeah,
figures,
okay.
the
The people, yeah, the ones who used to be Yamato. Yes, the Arcadia figures and like the Bandai high metal stuff.
and the Chogokin, that VF1 just vanished on
Yeah,
launch.
that stuff evaporates in seconds, right? So yeah, like it's really interesting because like Gunpla never used to be like that pre-pandemic. Before COVID, I don't think Gunpla was like that at all. Like retail releases were pretty straightforward. There would be enough stock produced that it wouldn't be particularly difficult to get hold of anything. And like one of the first things I can think of that was like a retail kit that people were really struggling to get. Was it the real grade Hainu?
Yep.
And I think the Zeong, like the real grade Zeong as well, like the not the regular release, but like the limited or special one that came with
The
the
last
extra
the last
gun
shooting
parts. The last
version.
shooting version, yeah, like that
The the
also
the the
evaporated.
Avas evaporated when they first came out. That DX transport could not be found anywhere.
Okay, I'll defer to you on that because I don't really know the
Yeah.
Ava stuff. It's the it's
Well,
outside of my
Ava's
wheelhouse.
Ava's got just a rabid fan base as anywhere else. It's
So,
just those kits evaporated on launch.
so in this scenario, like some of these sound like it's the introduction of like these direct to consumer lines, and then others. I mean, it kind of I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different causes here, and like things that we've kind of encountered in the hobby is like you have this new direct to consumer line that also has a limited nature in like what countries it distributes in. You have these retail releases that are much more attractive than others. and then like I mean, like the case of like a rabid fan base where it's like they just consume everything that comes out for that
Well,
thing.
see, I mean, yes, that's part of it, but like I think there's a wider issue. Like there were wider production issues generally, like, and I think that like it was a combination of that and like massively increased demand during like the early early mid COVID pandemic that kind of exacerbated all of that. But even like just before that, the sort of the cracks were starting to show in a couple of places, if that makes sense. Like
Yep.
because I'm just talking about even just like retail releases again. Um, and like I think people's crappy web stores not being able to take the strain of a hot release was sort of just becoming a really big problem. Like P Bandai, um,
Would crash
like
every time it opened
yeah,
up
like
for
the
orders.
US, the US store has never been very good. Like I don't remember the Japanese one being especially great either.
It's better than I think the best example is the first expo we had with the real grade perfectibility
Oh
and the
god.
site literally crashing every time people tried to check out. You would, just get an error message and then get sent back to the cart, and hopefully you could keep going. And I know some people just entirely lost out because everything was purchased before they could complete checkout.
So
Yeah, but I think that's a P that's a pre like that's a direct to consumer like limited release. But the so just for point like for I was talking about the Games Workshop stuff before. Basically, the Games Workshop store, like the web store, was doing that for every big release um for a while, and they've only more recently sort of introduced measures to like deal with it, but it's not. But like other
Those measures have done nothing other than annoy people even further because they just get the "you are next in line" and then that message never clears.
I mean, my personal experience is that's not the case, but I know it's not perfect, but it has improved.
Improved, but not improved enough.
Have Did they do limitations on the number of items someone could purchase on that store?
Uh, they they did actually for some items at least.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've also manually cancelled people who ordered
Mm.
multiples of certain high ticket things. Like
Yeah, there
they
was that book that came out where someone had like sent in 30 bots to order 3 copies each.
yeah, and they cancelled all but one order, which was a good
Yeah.
laugh. But yeah, like I'm not saying it's perfect, but they have definitely made improvements that I personally have seen, if you see what I mean. Um, but yeah, no, with Gunpla, the sort of you have a post-pandemic supply demand issue, and like Bandai are catching up, thankfully, because they're working on factory number 3, right? But but they basically like I remember like if you there was a period where if you were ordering from HLJ, for example, if you didn't get your pre-order in like within a couple of hours of a hot kit going up on pre-order for Gunpla, then that was it. You weren't getting it for months.
right.
And that was a sort of an unpleasant sharp shock to the system after years and years of Gunpla being pretty easy to buy on release.
It was always just a healthy supply, but prior to that, Bandai was running at capacity. And then when when lockdown happened, it was just like the strain was too much and everything got depleted.
Yeah, I was just say like so kind of like touching on this point of like scarcity, both in the sense a lot of the direct to consumer marketplaces end up being more artificial scarcity, whereas in like a lot of the retail scenario, it's like we can't meet demand. Like I feel like that's like a really big driver of like I missed out this time. I gotta like kind of driving that feeling of like I gotta make sure I nail the next one, or what if I don't catch, like when's the like you don't know when the next time's gonna happen. That like this is something might see a reprint. I think like sometimes like this like literally missing out because of like server error, or someone bought it like 30 times, or there's no anti not piracy, but anti-scalping measures in
Anti-bots,
place.
yeah.
Yeah, anti-botting measures. As someone who's I've literally wrote a bot to out scalp, not out scalp, but outpace scalper bots for not for Gunpla, but just for like just during like everything was being like snapped up immediately on every supply chain was like I ended up in like one scenario I actually wrote a bot to buy exactly what I needed as soon as it got onto a store because if I didn't it was gonna like be gone and on eBay at like 20x markup.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, what I was going to say was, it's kind of funny thinking about who else is in this one because I think like like Jag, Jishan, and I might have like some of the biggest backlogs of people I know generally.
It's not a
But
backlog; it's a box fort.
Yeah.
a pile of potential. But no, I it's I know that the combination of like, but like the FOMO that like that kind of engendered, like it was when retail, basically it was when retail releases started to get hit with the same kind of FOMO bullshit that like had previously been limited to like feed and exclusives and other stuff like that. That I was like, okay, well I'm either going to go big or go home because like I I would get too annoyed trying to casually buy things and being frustrated by it.
Mhm.
So I kind of just had to go. I mentally kind of had to go all in, and like I'm one of the lucky people who, you know, I was no longer having to do a very long and expensive commute because I was able to work from home at that point. So I basically ended up spending my sudden pile of disposable income into just buying every Gunpla release because like also because the way I like to customize, I like to just have a massive pool of parts to build from. Like I would want to have, I want to have like one of every kit essentially, so I can go, oh, I know this shape exists on that thing, or that thing comes with that. These arms would be good for this, and like because because I'm in the UK anyway, and like Gunpla availability has never been great here to begin with. Um, so I couldn't just rely, like if it was for a competition build or something like that, especially, like anything with any kind of time limit built in, I wouldn't have the luxury of being able to go and try and buy the thing new for a project. I'd have to have it in the backlog to be able to use it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that
mean
like all so it. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say it sounds like you for you like the backlog is more of like a uh sort of like not almost like a toolbox when it comes to your customizations rather than like I have a plan for each and every one. I mean, maybe you do have a plan for like everything that you acquire, but it almost sounds like you're acquiring them for the purposes of like I know that I will find use in these rather than just like letting them pile up.
It's about 50-50, but yeah, I think that basically that situation really brought out the worst of those traits in me with my collecting. And so I went from sort of picking up things that seemed really interesting, on release, and usually just buying them when they came out rather than pre-ordering, to pre-ordering everything the instant it went up to make sure that I'd get one. And my backlog like ballooned, like in by hundreds of kits. Um, I don't actually want to crunch the numbers on that, but
Yeah.
literally hundreds and hundreds of kits, because of that
Hundreds and
change in my
thousands, you
behavior.
say?
No, not the change in my behavior, like prompted by the change in the like the retail environment. Um, it's just like it's just a real. I feel like I'm a really terrible example of like, you know, election FOMO hitting somebody
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Something that came up on the previous recording, we talked about uh especially when it comes to like missing out on like a release. Um one thing is like when it comes to like collecting, like there's the thrill of the hunt. Like you're trying to find a specific thing, not necessarily like just the ones where you like buy on release, but it's like the ones where you're like, oh man, there's this thing from like 20 years ago. I gotta find it, but then like you want to make sure you're also not getting like screwed out of an unreasonable like price. Wasn't sure if like do you guys maybe have any thoughts around that
Um,
and like how it kind of ties in to this whole
I am very guilty of having done something like that on account of spending the last, I want to say, 7 years hunting down effectively every 1/100 plastic Knight of Gold kit that I can get my hands on. Even so, going so far as to try and find any of the limited edition variants where they would have clear parts, or in the case of these really old Volks and Wave kits, would be in like the most ugly cheese pearl gold, like just straight puke gold colors. And be like, do I want to spend this much money on them, or do I just get the regular release when one of those pop up at like almost like $100 a pop for
right?
a kit that I think during the end of its life cycle was selling for about 3,000 yen.
Wow. Yeah, I mean markups definitely have been like a big uh uh problem when it comes to like hunting for like the thing that you're like, I missed it on drop. This is not one of those like evergreen releases where it regularly gets cycled through the retail lineups. And it's like for me, I had found a kit from 86, like only $10 over MSRP. And I was like, I wanted one, I missed it. I was like, all right, well, let's, I have for part of my controlling impulse spending, I keep a separate budget just for hobby stuff. And it was like I like check the budget. Is it do we have enough in the bucket? We do. Cool. Grab it. Uh like that's at least for me like been like trying to fight the like to help like kind of fight that urge is like you have a separate like pool to pull from. Otherwise like spending can probably get out of control, you know?
With Suru
Hmm.
and their free shipping weekends, it's made coming across a, if not Grail kit, a recently out of print kit. You know, for example, like some of the IBO uh, grunt kits, and the prices have been reasonable, so it's easy to load up your cart and check out, and you have PayPal's Pay in 4, which makes the pain
Oh,
easier to spread out.
that's yeah, that's actually something we briefly touched on uh as well, but please continue.
Yeah, because you won't realize, what is $150 order spread out over, 8 weeks
Yeah.
doesn't seem too bad. But if you are ordering that same amount each time there's a free shipping weekend, it adds up.
Yeah. Like that was I think it was like that the whole idea of like the paying for or like putting stuff on credit. It's like it's one of those like risk factors when it comes to like you find either your grail kit on a hunt or a drop happens and you're like, I'm gonna grab four of this thing no matter what. And it's like the initial, bill is like a quarter of what it would be. And then, you're like, oh, it's not that much. And then it, gets silently pulled from your bank account over the next couple months. And then you do it again. And then you're not really considering that like what was maybe $25 at the time to you, because like that mental of like the mental math of like, oh, I only spent $25 now. It's like, well, like it's adding up. And like you got to make sure you have funds in there because like it'd be a really terrible thing to find out you're broke because you bought some model kits.
I mean, who's ever done that, right?
Oh
Yeah,
god.
Tony didn't do it like multiple times while I was in college,
Oh no.
buying rare kits.
uh, I mean Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it takes a bit of self introspection, but like also, hey, it's shiny plastic, whatever means necessary, right?
think part of it is also figuring out what necessarily appeals to you because especially with, P Bandai, you know, the fact that it's limited or it's in a specific color, especially if you're someone who is not painting and you just want a kit in a specific color and Bandai makes it and they drop it and will want to run out and get it, you know, it you very much are just sometimes too focused on getting every new thing that appears.
Yeah.
And like I think we mentioned this before uh the we started all this, but you know, you get that, nice, hit of adrenaline when you get it and then freaking out when it's actually in transit, not knowing where it's going to go in the pile that you already have.
That's a big one, I think. Or I mean, not to assume people's like mental states, but like it's you get that first hit of like, oh boy, I got the thing, and then it doesn't show up until
3 months
uh
later.
yeah.
I mean, how many people with the recent reprint of the Dendrobium
Mhm.
just saw it and were just, shut up and take my money? But where do you put something like the Dendrobium once it's built?
So like that's funny. It's funny you mentioned that now because actually I was going to talk about this um a bit later. Basically, I don't have I don't really have like Grail kits because I don't say like I own everything, but because I own so much stuff generally, like I don't really have like Grail kits like a lot of people do.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things I would have counted as such was the high grade Universal Century Dendrobium, right? The full 1/44 scale one. I got one this week. But like I didn't actually get it. I didn't get it reprinted. I didn't get it from like the recent reprint or anything. There was like a local guy selling one, and like it was so reasonable, I couldn't refuse. Um, and I was like, oh great, I finally got one of these things. It turns up, and I'm like, great, I finally got one of these things. Where the hell am I going to put it? Um, because it's huge. Like it's one of the few kits where it's bigger assembled than it is in the box.
It is 1 meter long and about 50 centimeters tall and about 50 wide and about 30 tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I picked one up when I started this hobby. I found it in a store and I was just like, yeah, I got a paycheck. This thing's like $400. YOLO, why not? Get it home, like, where am I going to put this thing? Well,
Yep.
top of the drawers it'll go. And shortly afterwards, I learned that that particular model is not suitable to be near cats.
Oh
They
no.
they see something long and pointy jutting out. They think it's a scratching post of sorts, and my cat, bless his idiotic soul and his one brain cell, decided he was going to headbutt the cannon to scratch behind his ear and snapped it in half.
Oh no.
He's not a particularly smart cat. Poor boy
That,
scared of his own shadow.
you see that's a really good point because it's like you have with especially with anything that's you build, right? It's like a two-part process of like, oh, I got the box in, crap, now where do I put this box? Then I build it, crap, where do I put this now built thing that I don't, I can't just like stack a bunch. I mean, you could, but like you're not just like gonna stack a whole bunch of built models together, right? You want to display it nicely, safely. uh
I will
I
buy another
I
dendrobium
actually
down the
bought.
line.
So you know those like 100 yen Japanese display bases that like Japanese Gundam Twitter was going crazy over last year.
Oh,
yes.
the ones from Daiso?
Yeah, the ones that were in Daiso for 100 yen a pop that like became impossible to find because
I
like,
haven't
people
even
bought.
checked my nearby Daiso for one yet.
I realized I wanted, I think, like I want to say 24 to fill out like a full set of shelves with nothing but those things. And I've been slowly buying them in sort of, in very small numbers from people who are just selling. Like, for whatever reason, a bunch of people sort of, I think, had bought several to have a display and then decided they didn't want them after all, locally in the UK. But yeah, I've been trying to come up with better display space for my Gunpla of late because I haven't ever really had a very good dedicated display. I did for a while have one display unit that's like a little glass cabinet. It's got lights on the top. It's nice, but it's nothing super special. But it's currently behind a wall of boxes in the room that most of my Gunpla lives in, just because that's just the way my house is at the moment. Because that's the room that had had like a it was a burst pipe and like it got flooded and stuff. So my hobby space is a mess generally. Will be for a little while still. But yeah, I'm desperately trying to make more of my hobby space for precisely because I don't want to just have all these nice built kits sitting around doing nothing. Especially because I don't like the snap fitting kit isn't sort of making them to me. Snap fitting kits is the very first step that makes them become the clay which I'll use to refine into an actual finished piece.
Right.
Before that point, like they're just the rawest of raw materials.
The blank canvas.
Yes.
Yeah.
The aerial I have sitting in a cup right now on my desk because I was in the process of panel lining it on and off for like a week.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way I am with my kits, the way I build and stuff. Like, and I that's not like me. That's not me making a value judgment about people who just like to build or a panel line or whatever.
Yeah.
But I because to me the hobby is doing crazy customs and like making everything absolutely my own on some level.
Mhm.
I really want to be showing all that stuff off better.
Yeah. And I think like that right there is like another like that kind of ties back into Jishin's point from earlier of like part of like one of the tie-ins to the I gotta grab something when it drops is the people who don't do full customs and like they're like, oh, this is printed in a color I want to do. And so I gotta make sure I get it, you know.
Or it's plated, or it's
Yeah, special coating edition.
The new Fazverka. I think that had one like initial print run,
Mhm.
like when it originally came out, and every version that I think I've seen since has been that titanium finish version from Gundam Base that pops up for $300 or more. Somebody somewhere is buying that because that's the only version of the Faz that they can get right now. Like that's how I don't want to say severe, but like that's like what their FOMO is doing to them.
It could be somewhat worse. There's been a few people who, in blind fit of FOMO, went out and acquired the old MG Faz, thinking it was the Verkar,
Oh
and got
gosh,
a very
yeah.
and got a very nasty surprise.
I've seen so many people do that, and I feel very bad for them.
Ugh.
Because they're overspending massively on it as well, because like the prices are all inflated on the secondary market, right? So
Yeah.
they don't know any better.
Bamboozled by their own desire.
Or unscrupulous listings online as well.
Yeah, who'll put a picture up of the Verkar and then sell you the old MG. Or in one case, what was it? Someone was selling. I think it was like a master grade Hainu Verkar, and then when they got the box inside was the 100 Sandrock.
What?
That was Amazon, baby. That happened, I think, 3 times to someone.
Oh boy.
Like they kept getting like 100 Sandrock.
Well, at least it wasn't rocks.
Hobby Lobby. No, which is the American hobby store that's run by
Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, the ones the Christian.
That's Hobby Lobby.
So those guys, they are absolutely useless for shipping out Gunpla. Like, because there was a period where they were having crazy deals on their website, and like people were going nuts for them. And like, because I remember like a couple of people on Reddit would be like, "Oh yeah, you know, there's this was the deal. I got this." But like, I know so many people who tried, and like a friend of mine, not like one of my friends who like regularly mules stuff for me from the US. He tried to get me. I think it's the real grade crossbone or something. They were selling crazy cheap at one point, and they got shipped like 3 SD Sangokuden something or others, and it's like, well, this isn't what I ordered.
Wow.
Not even remotely comparable. But like they wouldn't accept a return on it and stuff, and it was like, oh, that you know, what do you think this is? Can you not tell the difference between these two things? Like even the bits in English are different.
Them and that bloody 40% off sale that everybody keeps harping on about.
You know, it's another part of hobby FOMO, like you know, going crazy for deals. Um, when especially when a relative drought, right? So like when because HLJ never have sales for Gunpla anymore, not like significant ones because
No,
they
they
don't
haven't.
need to clear the stock. You know, and very few other places have for the same reason.
Yeah, HLJ hasn't had a sale for Gunpla since I want to say 2016. I think was the last time they had one of like significant deep cut discounts.
No, yeah.
Like now it's like 10-20% off, but before, like, I got a whole pile of old Musha BB kits that were like 80% off. And they weren't even like the small 500 yen ones. These were like the giant, like, hey, this thing turns into a castle, that turns into a large SD kit, that turns into something the size of a perfect grade.
I've got one of those.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's like
that thing was, they sold that thing to me for like 800 yen.
so there's a like talking about like you know pandemic induced shortages. Like early into the pandemic, like I was really active on the Discord server for the Gundam wiki. And like loads of people there couldn't believe some of the kits I had because I'd bought Age and G-Reco stuff that was being cleared out from HLJ, you know, for like half price because that stuff sold horribly, right? Because the series were not very good and they were not, well, regardless of what you think of like their quality, they were not very popular and the kits did not sell very well. So you know, they were very cheap for all. That's why they weren't getting reprinted very often either.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I should have picked up G-Reco kits when I had the chance. I'm glad
Yeah.
that I grabbed the Age Mega Size kits for such a steal that I found them. I think I paid 7,000 yen for both together, which
So
is
was that a relatively recent find, or was that like a
that
back when it was airing discount?
that was complete drought, but just before COVID hit.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just wondering, like, again, because we're talking about, you know, FOMO in the hobby, like, how much of that was sort of a, oh, you know, I'm not sure I'll ever see these again for this price, given the way things are, kind of purchase.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was through a secondhand auction, and I got lucky. I was just like, I've never seen them that cheap before. I'm going for it.
yep.
I mean, have you ever had the regret, like, you find something and then, you know, like, for example, I had on watch lists on like 3 different sites for the master grade Sinanju Stein narrative. uh I, you know, constantly would get hit with listings, but they were like way overpriced. And then I found one that was like the lowest it had ever been in years, and I grabbed it. And then more recently, the last year, they're like, "Oh, hey, we're doing another Sinanju Stein narrative, but it's the Verka." And like, God, swear word. It's just like,
Uh, no, sorry. I
no,
just
no,
cut you off.
it's just like that whole, like, it's like I could have waited, but like you never know, right?
Yeah, well, I think, well, so uh, you've kind of reminded me of something else. Bandai removing their upcoming kit listings.
That killed me.
Well, that's I like the thing is I understand why they did it, um, because it was essentially like while it was It was one of those really unfortunate damned if you do, damned if you don't things, because I think it was absolutely like helping to enable fairly casual scalpers,
Mhm.
like who like, I think like the combination of lots of little people was making a big dent in the availability of stuff. And like wasn't ever gonna deter like the really serious people, but it was enough to put off a significant portion of more lazy people, shall we say, I suspect.
Right.
Um, and like I mean, it really stings as a consumer because like the FOMO only hits harder when you don't know when stuff is ever going to reprint or whatever because the availability is not being
Yeah.
um, made.
Advertised.
Yeah, it's not being advertised, and like you just don't know when it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
But when the new factory goes up, they might bring back that restock list because they'll have more than enough capacity to keep shelves stocked with larger volume orders.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
like a lot of the big kits are currently aren't seeing as much reprints as they used to because it's like, oh, we could print this one big box if you and fill 3 pallets up, but for that same space you could put like 400 smaller kits on there.
It's also machine time as well because like some of the bigger kits are like I keep talking about this with like the master grade complexity versus a high grade kit, right? But the machine time to print 100 units of a single master grade kit that's like 12 sprues, and sells for like 4,500 yen, could print you three modern high grades that sell for 2,000 something each, you know. And then there's the space issue on top. So it doesn't make a lot of financial sense to reprint so much stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, I get why it's frustrating on many levels to many people.
Yeah. Like I like the transparency. I don't know if there's any other like manufacturers that have had that sort of transparency of like, hey, this is what's going to be, hitting shelves eventually within like the next
Uh,
10 months. Like I mean,
Volks kind of does,
hmm,
but theirs is a very ham-fisted roundabout way where they'll just put it on the Japanese Twitter. Hey, XYZ kit's getting a reprint.
I mean
Like,
it's something.
here's the day we expect it to be leaving the factory.
I mean, like that's something like I enjoyed getting the reprint list because it was almost like a puzzle where you're like looking at like patterns of like, oh hey, they just did like a bunch from like this one series. Maybe that means that we'll see more in like a similar series, or you know, just kind of like trying to read between the lines, even if it's wrong, but like it almost like made it a little bit more bearable to be like, well, I see that they're reprinting this, so I don't need to like dive on that grenade yet.
It's funny actually because that reminds me. You were talking about like kits you regret FOMO buying with a markup.
Yeah.
So the high grade Seed Destiny Abyss Gundam was like one of the hardest retail kits from the last 20 years to get hold of for a while. There isn't like some random SD thing. Because like for whatever reason, it just kept getting skipped over for reprints when all the other kits from the same line were getting done. And I bought one a couple of years back. I didn't pay crazy money for it. I paid a shockingly reasonable amount, including shipping from Canada. but that worked out to cheaper than I could get it from anywhere else whatsoever, including like direct from Japan.
I wonder what store you could have bought that from. I probably have a good idea.
It was secondhand. It was from a solo seller on eBay. So
Okay, because Canadian Gundam for a while had a lot of like old seed kits just sitting around.
gotcha. No, it was just from a dude on eBay. I just got lucky. I saw it went up for buy. It went up for buy it now with a best offer, like really, really.
Yeah.
And I saw it like within a day or two of it going up.
Back when we had access to the reprint link, the Nobel Gundam was one of the worst ones to buy. It came out like they dropped it, then they did the Berserker version, and the Berserker kept getting reprinted while regular Nobel was just left hanging. And I think it was like 5 years before it got a second reprint.
That's wild. Because now you can't get the Berserker for love nor money.
It was. It was. I can't remember if it was Nobel or Berserker, but one of them would get like reprinted a fair bit, while the other you just could not find.
I think it might have been the other way around in that case, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, because yeah. So the Abyss is finally getting or has just got another reprint. But like it's but you know, with the run to the Seed movie, like the Dom Trooper, you know, I got my Dom Troopers from HLJ like at the start of the year after having had them on back order for literally like 5 years or something.
Oh.
Um, but again, you know, they were on Suguriya, but like they were 8,000 yen or whatever. Like they were 80 something US dollars on Sugu. Even with free shipping, that's like stupid money for one, you know.
Yeah.
But I kept being tempted. Um, so but yeah. So what you're saying about you know, doing guesswork about so what other kits are going to be printed alongside other ones. When when Bandai did reprints of lots of the Seed Destiny stuff last time, so back like I think it's 2022 maybe now. Like when because Savior had been another one that was really hard to get hold of. And you know, I love Savior, like the high grade 144th one. I mean, I love Savior. It's a really cool design. It gets completely screwed over in the show in terms of what you get to see it doing. But like the high grade kit was one of those ones you couldn't get again for love nor money for ages. And they reprinted that. They did Chaos. They did Gaia as well, which was another one that was hard to get pre-pandemic for a while. Like because Bandai used to be quite bad about printing kits that had female pilots. Actually, that was like one really noticeable trend for a while. Because you couldn't get Gaia, you couldn't get the Nobel, you couldn't get the GN Archer specifically, or the TRN Tausi, but like most other 00 kits were available and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, so Big Bad Toy Store, when all the other Seed Destiny stuff was reprinted, they also put up pre-orders for the Abyss. And I've realized they're finally going to be filling like 2 or 3 year old pre-orders for people now in the next couple of months, I guess. Now it's finally actually been reprinted. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent.
I will have to go check the stores for some Seed kits. There's a few that I would wanted to get. Be nice if they could reprint the 1/100 stuff though.
Yeah, well, those are a real. Some of like a lot of them are not great, but like some of those are real, real like forgotten gems. I think like
Yeah, I like their build style, the design of them, and in some cases just how derpy they look.
I like the later Seed. Basically, the later Seed Destiny ones are pretty much full mechanics type stuff, or like re 100s just ahead of time. Like the Savior, the Legend, the to a lesser extent the Infinite Justice was good, but weird flaws. The Akatsuki as well. Like those four were just abnormally good compared to all the other kits of the line. And like they were in some way like they were no, okay, they weren't nicer than the 00 stuff that came after, but the 00 stuff that came after was also sort of noticeably a huge level up from the older 100 stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm just hoping for a green frame, the Regan Duel, and Vent Savior.
Oh, you mean that the versus Astro stuff? Yeah, because that's not been reprinted in a hot minute, has it? Like,
No, it hasn't, and
that's some of the hardest.
that's some of the stuff I want right now. And it's like I keep my eye out for them, and every time I see one up, it's just like, do I want to spend that much money right now? No.
Yeah,
Well,
no, Regen Duel was they had one on Sudo, I think, and I was so tempted. But it was like relatively cheap by the standards of these things. But I was like, to be honest though, like that design in particular, I think comes with the extra bazooka, but
yeah, it includes the Gearbolg.
yeah, but that's in the master grade now anyway. Basically, it doesn't take much to make a custom one out of the master grade, and I don't care about the colors because I'm one of those people who paints kits. So, you know, to me, it's not really. I actually wonder if that's why like it's cheaper than some of the others. But you know, it doesn't have that much value to me personally now. It's only a thing to collect as a collector rather than a thing as a builder, I guess.
Yeah, I could probably 3D print the missing parts to turn the master grade blue into the regen. Because you just need something to bulk up the ankles and extend them out, change the knee pads, and I think the front, the front skirt and the torso cockpit part.
Uh, but just like speaking, going back to FOMO and talking about like prices that we were seeing on Suru, because like they always list the yen price, and then you can see how much they've doubled, tripled, quadrupled it to come to their price. And because what's the word? I guess the yen is weak right now compared to the dollar. The prices have been fairly low. So it's made many kits that I picked up from there worthwhile because it was comparable to what I would pay stateside, assuming I got a reprint and hit US stores. And then I might have had to order it from, one of the web shops. But like, where do you draw that line for pricing? Because, an example is the Kshatriya repair. That is probably top on my grail list. And I know there is one on Suru, but that price is just, it's easily 2 to 3 times the normal retail value. So
That's
immediately it's
crazy.
just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll just wait. But like, where is that line for you in terms of like, where do you say like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that?
It depends on
Yeah,
the kit. My lines are 25% above MSRP, 50, and if it's like a kit that I know is discontinued, it's never getting a rerun, or the company's gone bust, I will just be like, I won't go above 2 times MSRP. And then
I
after
live
that,
in.
it's a case of desire.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I live in the UK, so like UK prices for gun. I think I mentioned this before. UK prices for Gun Plus suck anyway, which
Oh
really
yeah,
skews what I'm willing to pay compared to like secondhand Japanese prices, for example. And like I was saying with that Abyss Gundam from Canada, it was listed at like 200 Canadian dollars or something shipped, but of course that was like £100, and then I was like, okay, but if I insultingly offer him half of that and he accepts it, that's not all that much more than I would pay for one at retail in the UK because our retail prices are so bad.
yeah.
And
Uh,
it was easy to justify.
I am eternally grateful that Garinda allowed haggling at his shop. That's the guy that runs Gundam Mad. He used to have. I don't know if he still does, but has like a stand at like a lot of the expos in the UK, and you can haggle down his prices.
I feel like leading up to, COVID and, now and like the first like 2 years of COVID times, I feel like the mantra was kind of like if you saw it in store and you liked it, buy it because there's no telling when it's going to come back, especially if it's not a new release kit. You there was a whole thing where like stores were kind of like gaming the system, trying to like make larger orders of certain things in order to get more stock allocated to them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know, but you know, it was just everybody trying to fulfill that, increased demand, because we were all stuck inside. But, with the new factory coming online, what by next year, and presumably they're going to reprint an entire slew of older kits. Maybe not everything, but I would hopefully a good chunk. Should the mantra at this point just be like, you know, wait and see, especially for say like IBO full mechanics kits or the Reco kits because they just finished. They're still doing the movies.
no,
Um,
those movies are done.
yeah, but has
There's
there been like a big reprint? I mean, they did like the master grades, but how much of like
uh
well, not the
for
master grades. I'm sorry,
for
there's no G Reco master grades. I'm thinking of age, but
yeah for G Reco, there's been nothing. Like we didn't even get a new kit for the movies, even though they introduced a new version of the G Self.
Yeah, so don't expect don't
Yeah,
expect any G Reco stuff at any point, I guess.
yeah, that'll be something where they'll just they'll do a run, but it'll be like of a lesser quantity than what they would normally print out and see what happens.
I mean, we haven't gotten a release of the movies stateside other than I think when they were on the Gundam Info channel during our expo.
But you
Uh,
probably won't like it. I don't think you're gonna see a run of print, yeah, a run of kits for that.
yeah.
Like
We
even
got the import for physical release when that last movie dropped last year, so it will be probably another 8 months or so before someone like Crunchyroll, well, I guess no, it'd still be Sunrise. Yeah, before Sunrise even looks at releasing a box set of the movies stateside.
Do you think, because I feel like we're trying to get, we're at the point where, we're able to, you know, we, buy the things that we want. But Bandai is always looking to get younger people into the hobby. And I feel like, they've done that with the Build Divers and Build Fighter series. But, people who have kids who have watched those may have an interest in figuring out where some of these kits have their origins. And, you know, if you m- made it available in the States, so that at least people could watch it easily enough, that could justify, reprints considering.
I I don't think so, honestly.
No.
When like, so for comparison, like the entire sum of Gunpla in the entire rest of the world only eclipsed Japanese domestic consumption last year.
Yep.
And they didn't do it for the Japanese release of the movies, so it doesn't seem like they would do it for the US, because the US alone is still. I don't know if we've had like numbers on the US versus rest of versus rest of Asia, essentially, but I suspect it's still. I suspect the rest of Asia still outsells the US.
On the list, US is something like fifth or sixth in terms of the market.
Yeah,
It's like
like
probably just entering top five, but it'd be Japan, Korea, Thailand, and China would
Yeah,
be occupying top four.
yeah. Like according to, I believe either it's like a couple years ago, the shareholder reports, they were like talking
yeah,
about their expansion into the overseas markets, identifying US and China as like big targets for them to like try to expand, not just, the brand of uh gunpla, but like the idea of hobby as a whole. And I think we've definitely seen like the results of that to some degree by like
Uh,
more.
and Gundam as a franchise and IP as well.
Yeah, we've seen more, like they've definitely like done a push where it's like, oh hey, we're now getting like earlier releases of like certain media, which then feeds into the cycle of like, oh, I gotta get the plastic, the toy or the model, helping feed the beast, so to speak.
yeah. But I don't think. Basically, what I'm saying is, I I have a thing about managing people's expectations. I can't help it. I've always
Oh,
like
yeah,
I
no, that's fine.
I no, but it's just no, like but so like when what Jishin was saying about like the hope for G Reco kit reprints as a consequence, or like the idea of like Bandai wanting to release older kits to the US, um like to appeal to a market of like parents of kids who've watched the build stuff. I just don't think that's enough of a market for them to care, like as a company, if you see what I mean. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, it makes sense. Like they're gonna obviously they're gonna try to like focus on the things that they know will sell rather than the wishful thing. I mean, like not to like I mean, Jishin, like there was definitely like some really strong logic there. Um, and I think it ties more into like the more recent releases that like where that kind of pattern follows. But it's like I don't know. I mean, like it'd be interesting to see like that did follow suit though.
I was gonna say like talking about like things that are financially viable for Bandai to do. I think one thing a lot of people don't take into account with this stuff when I'm like wish listing or thinking about what might get reprinted is that Bandai price their old, like, with a relatively small amount of exceptions, Bandai don't increase their prices for older Gunpla kits.
Hmm.
And like this is something I know I brought it up when the Destroy Gundam high grade was announced, because basically people were comparing it to the high grade Universal Century Psycho Gundam, right? And it's, well, I think like the head height is the same according to the official stats, and like the kit looks to be that size, but the Destroy is roughly twice as much plastic because it's basically a Psycho Gundam with a giant spherical backpack. Sorry, a giant cylindrical backpack with guns up sticking out of it.
Mhm.
So I think it's 3 times the cost of the high grade Psycho Gundam, and it costs about. It costs 3 times as much as the high grade Psycho Gundam did, and it's about twice as much plastic. And like by comparison, when you consider that Bandai hasn't increased the price on the old kit in 20 years or whatever, it seems a lot more reasonable. But like, it sort of goes back the other way. Like a lot of these older kits are much less financially worth it to them to print to an extent, because they are they're very cheap, in terms of retail price, and in terms of manufacturing, they aren't a lot cheaper to produce than runs of kits they charge more for, basically. So like the Seed TV stuff, for example, is like they're still like three sprue kits, right? And that's comparable to a modern high grade still. So if you got like a 1,000 yen, some of them are literally like 1,000 yen. If you've got like a 1,000 yen older kit for a TV series that is, and it will sell, but like without something like the Seed movie push, I can definitely see why they sort of kept a lot of that stuff on the back burner. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just something that you might want to factor in when you're sort of thinking of your personal your personal FOMO, and what may or may not get reprinted anytime soon, because we
Yeah.
haven't really touched on that.
I mean, because in like that instance, it makes me think, well, if the G-Reco high grades aren't going to get a reprint anytime soon,
Mhm.
Looking at the prices now on Suru, are those more accurate to what it should be on the secondary market in terms of, if I was going to look on eBay or other sites? Because like the thing about Suru right now is that, the prices may be slightly higher, but you're not paying for expensive international shipping at that point compared to, purchasing off of Japan Online, Mandarake, where especially Mandarake, where it's, you know, trying to hunt for things that are all in one store instead of having to place multiple orders and then deal with that shipping cost.
Right. Oof.
Yeah, or like when you're using one of those middleman services and you've got to like pay for the domestic Japanese shipping as well, right?
Yeah.
So
I made that mistake with Yahoo auctions, and I bought a bunch of stuff and I was like, "Oh yeah, just consolidate it all into one box," and did not think about what that meant for me.
I mean,
yeah,
even now with the new releases, like I know some people who are really, really big, unicorn fans. And so the narrative Stein Verka and the narrative Apex that are coming out,
Yes.
you know, the prices on those in Japan, are easily $30 cheaper than they would be in the States. So they're probably ordering those off HLJ. With international shipping, you're pretty much paying US pricing anyway. You're just getting it maybe a month early. You know, is that, worth that extra cost to you in terms of like your FOMO? Because It's gonna hit stateside. It'll probably hit your local shop. It's definitely gonna hit, all of the major online stores, and you should be able to order them, or if you haven't pre-ordered one already from one of the American shops.
Meanwhile, the Brit and the Canadian in the conversation are just like, wow, that must be nice.
Yeah.
I think something that kind of like ties into this that and maybe I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's seen this, but like so during the last few years, the rise of the hobby, or I say the rise of the hobby, the drastic spike in interest in the hobby because we needed things to do at home, and you had more people who were like, "Oh, hey, it'd be cool if I was an influencer in this space now." And then that kind of drives more of the people who are like, "I gotta grab it before anyone else can get it, so I can be the first person to have the video on insert new hotness kit here." I feel like that kind of like a lot of people trying to like carve their niche in that space has almost like it's like you have to have the social clout of like I got this before anyone else did, sort of thing.
I think that also feeds into FOMO, being first.
Yeah.
Gotta
Uh,
have the latest hotness.
I mean, you know, which from Mercury as an example, you know, the prologue dropped. The announcement of the initial kits, the Ariel, the Lafrith, the Beggar Bow. You know, everybody was very interested in those, and I think the HLJ initial orders like vanished quickly,
Yeah.
and I
For some
remember,
of
yeah, I remember that picture of like the Mycalis just like sitting on store shelves because no one liked Shadiq. uh,
yeah, I
sorry, go
no
ahead.
no no. Just
Uh,
the talk of like people rushing to get stuff for like influencer clout. I know a couple of people who do YouTube reviews and stuff like that, and like um it's always it was always kind of painful watching them like rushing to get things like before anybody else, or like rushing to get their videos out before other people, like especially when a lot of them are in Asia. So they are like they're already sort of ahead of the pack, as it were.
Mhm.
um and I like for my part, like as you all know, like I build at such a glacial pace because I don't snap fit kits and call them done, because of the way I build. I don't build quickly, full stop.
Right.
Um,
What
and
does this
so
word
I
build?
so I but like the thing is, I had been acquiring so because of again like because of stupid pandemic reasons, because of the issues with shipping, right? Um, because there was no surface mail to the UK, and no air small packet for a while. Um, Actually, I mean the surface mail sort of came and went, but like uh, for a long time, the cheapest way for me to get stuff shipped from HLJ was and that meant I was getting new releases. Like sometime if they came out on like the Thursday, I'd have them the following Monday. And so like I felt weirdly bad about it because I knew that I was getting these kits in. I wasn't going to get time to build them. Like I've got medical issues. I had like a lot of big life stuff going on.
Mhm.
And I did start snap fitting some kits just to not feel like I was stockpiling things and just kind of showing them off to people, because I like people a couple of people actually did try and guilt me over it, which I thought was kind of a dick move. But I did genuinely feel bad about getting some of these kits so much faster than other people who were like clearly jonesing for them, and for whatever reasons of their own. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It was a weird time. I'm glad is now behind us for the most part. But
yeah,
yeah, it was just very strange.
Yeah. And I want to put out there we're not shaming anyone who has a backlog. I mean, my backlog is so massive. I have a spreadsheet for it. Uh, but it's
Yeah,
just
like
like, yeah, I think it's just like I kind of like wanted to talk a bit a lot or a lot about like, just our own experiences and like how we've addressed it, what we've seen, about it. You know, but yeah, like just want to definitely make sure we're putting out there like no backlog shaming here. Uh or not that is not what we're putting out. Not
Yeah,
saying
like
that
it.
not saying anyone is guilty of doing that, but yeah, I just want to make sure we
If you have a backlog, cool. If you don't have one, that's still cool because that means you don't have to, worry about, oh, should I build this kit next or this one? You just build whatever you get next.
yeah. But I mean, like I do hear you. Like it does get to a point where like I've gotten to the point where I have like a separate snap fit list with my backlog because like I don't want to just snap build it and it's done in like for a lot of these. And like you want to like feel like you're putting a dent into it. It's not just becoming this stockpile of polystyrene on shelves or the floor.
Yeah, like I mean, I was saying at the start of this that we think that some of us have got some of the biggest backlogs that most people who know us are likely to know of. Um, like there's an entire room in my now my not so new house, but like when we bought this house, we literally had a room set aside for hobby stuff. You know, with a view to clearing out my storage unit.
I think
So I
right
just
now mine's. I think right now mine's spread across 5 different postcodes.
yeah. But like, yeah. So it's like I have a I have a spreadsheet for my kids as well, and because my spreadsheet is kind of there to help me manage what I've got for a build that I have an idea for a contest or something like that. Where so many online contests have got like you've got to use a new kit that's not been snap fitted or anything.
Yeah.
That like that does weird things to my brain, unfortunately, and like makes me want to sort of hoard unbuilt kits. And so like part of the reason I did the spreadsheet was to help me sort of keep tabs on what I had and in what state it was. So stuff that snap fitted is down as being snap fitted.
That
Um,
that
yeah,
that's
so
something. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's something I actually want to make sure we talk about. Not today, but like a later point is like the rules people set out for competitions and like it has to be like new in box when you start. But sorry, please continue.
no, it's cool. Like, yeah, it's like it's interesting because it's a factor that's informed my personal sense of FOMO because one of the few things that gets me motivated to build, for various reasons, including like the general scarcity of time, um, and like and, like spoons I can dedicate to my hobby. One of the things that does motivate me to build is competitions. Well, I joined the Danpla server because I heard about the G Gundam build from Witch. I didn't realize it was like a sort of a build off with prizes when I first heard about it, but that's definitely sort of what kept me around in that community initially.
The prizes are not the charming people. Oh, for shame.
No, I mean like the build off in general, just being an event that was going on.
I know.
But like I'm just very strongly motivated to build by that kind of thing. Not so much the prizes, but the deadline and peer pressure does things to my ADHD brain. Um, and yeah, so that shaped my FOMO. It shaped the way I look at my collection as a whole, and it's literally shaped the way that I've worked out for categorizing and store and just cataloging my collection. Um, just like how you were talking about with your spreadsheet and like how you've got a separate one for snap fits. I just I've got the condition of the kit on my list. Uh, um, I think it's like, is it new in box? Is it snap fitted? Is it incomplete, broken, other?
Hmm.
And I've got a notes column for filling it out.
You know, one of the things, just like an idea, you know, a lot of some high grade boxes, a lot of them are similar in size. Just keep a bottom and keep the tops of the box. And then whenever one of the contests come up, you can just be like, "Oh yeah, here you go. It's new in box."
But they want a picture of the sprues.
Oh
Off you.
yeah, but I mean, like, if they're wrapped in plastic and you take the picture, are they going to be able to zoom in and be like, no, that's certainly not that kit.
Yeah, if you take
I mean,
pictures before time and mess with the EXIF data, they will never know what day that
Uh,
picture was taken.
I do
I
not
guess that's true.
condone. I do not condone providing false submissions to contests, but I'm not gonna not condone it.
It's like you said, it doesn't make sense that a lot of people may just snap fit a kit and have it displayed, and then for a build contest they'd be like, oh yeah, that's a good base, I want to use that, but then it's like, wait, I have to go buy a new one just for this? Why?
Yeah, and that's something I think I feel like we could definitely like probably dig into pretty well too.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of those competitions also conveniently happen to be run by stores, so
Hmm, the
Yeah,
plot
well,
thickens.
we talked about contest judging in the last recording as well, because
did we? It sounded like a lot like Transformers talk to me.
there were two main threads of discussion, and basically the one that you should have been awake for was the contest judging, because of the GVWC, because like we just kept drifting back to that again and again. So I feel like there's a whole episode in contests, like the current sort of the online contest culture, and like trends and problems and everything else.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to FOMO. So in the previous episode, everyone in there was based in the States. Now we happen to have two people who live in countries that don't have P-Bandai access, and conveniently our plastic crack dealer is also in here, who peddles said plastic crack.
Oh yeah, I just going back to, again, right back to FOMO, when Tuesday they dropped the announcement of the pre-production, the Frith, and I could just feel you know the adrenaline spike in my body as I was just jumping straight to the P Bandai page to look at the pictures, and because I knew gonna get that, you know, and then when it all vanished because everyone was like, "Oh, it was a mistake," and then only for Thursday to roll around and everything drops right there, and again it was another spike of like, "Holy shit, holy shit, is this going to still be here in 5 minutes?" Because there's definitely been times when kits have sold out in an instant. Oh no, it's just that rush to like get through the purchasing process and hoping the site doesn't crash, which it didn't, but it still had the occasional glitch. But
Yeah, they
go
couldn't
ahead.
put that genie back in the bottle when that happened.
Yeah, well, you talking about the Liverith pre-production model reminded me, actually. I think that they must have started massively increasing the stock allocation to PBOS, like as of like late last year, because I noticed there was a point after which kits were still available the next day. Not necessarily for long into the next day.
But they've also increased. It used to be like what, the every third Thursday of the month, and now it's like sometimes up to twice a week they're getting peeve drops. So there's also the case of there's just so many bloody releases dumping onto that site that not everyone's able to keep up.
I mean, it used to be, like you said, every third Thursday. Like, it was on a schedule. You could plan ahead. You would know when it
Mhm.
was coming, and that kind of kept your FOMO a little bit in check because you could, you know, like Springer, have a budget,
Yeah.
set it aside because you knew it was coming. You didn't know what was going to be there, but you knew there was probably going to be something that you wanted to grab.
I mean, also you could just look at the previous releases, and it was generally like a
Yeah,
month to 2 months back would be what USP would be seeing. So
that's
you'd look
true.
at the old Japanese releases, and it's like, okay, so they had that a month ago, should be coming up now.
Yep. And then, I want to say that was true through 2021, maybe 2022. But at a certain point, it just started to switch to the first week of the month, or just a random drop on a Wednesday for some reason.
Yeah.
And now it is much more in line with Japan, where a kit will be announced 2 days before it actually drops on the premium Bandai site. And so you get very little time to
Budget
make,
around that.
yeah. I mean, it feels, and I think that's where, people do, like, again, the pay in four comes back up, people putting it on credit cards because, it's hitting, in between a payday. I know sometimes you're lucky and it hits the Thursday before you get paid. And so depending on the payment method you use, it can get a delay before it hits your bank account. And so it's usually fine. But if it's, outside your normal, pay window, you're just like, well, how do I resolve this? How do I get this kit in my hand? Or is it popular enough that I'm going to have to deal with it now, or can it wait a week until I have actual money to buy
Fuck, I forgot what I was going to say.
it? Bandai keeps coming for our wallets, and we're all terrified.
Hey, thank you for listening to Hangarby Hobby Hangout. Hopefully, we see you back in the next one, and you can find this and other episodes where many fine podcasts are found.